3, 2, 1. Hey, welcome. Are you good?
Talk.
3, 2. Hey, welcome to...
Sorry.
It would be nice working with proper villains again. 3, 2. Bonus points if you know the video. Movie line. 3, 2, 1. Hey, welcome to another episode of the Matt and Fiona Show. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Matt, that's Fiona. Every now and again I throw this in for fun.
In case you're wondering.
Yeah, if you didn't know who we were, I'm Matt Scott. No. Thank you so much for joining us. We're super excited. I, maybe more than she, for this episode, because we're going to kind of talk about a vein that I keep getting more and more excited about.
Yeah.
Which is not as maybe spiritual as some of them, but it doesn't matter. There is a large spiritual portion of this.
Yeah.
It just may not be where I start. I want to talk about what are you outsourcing?
Technically, you want to ask the question.
I do want to ask the question. What are you outsourcing in your life?
Mm-hmm.
I'll wait. Because dead air is amazing. So, I'll start back at the beginning. When I was a kid, I was a Boy Scout. And I loved being a Boy Scout.
You still have the shirt?
I do still have the
and
shirt.
And the badges.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I got a big sash full of badges because I was awesome. But I loved it.
Uh-huh.
I enjoyed going out in the woods. I enjoyed learning a little bit of resiliency, even though I didn't know what it was. Mm-hmm. Is that yawn counter number 3?
At least.
No, since we officially started.
Yeah, probably. Sorry about that.
You're going to get a counter down at the bottom. But I love learning how to be somewhat self-sufficient at an early age. It was really, really cool to know that as a kid, I could go into the woods with a map and a compass and go somewhere.
Navigate yourself.
I could navigate. I could go where I needed to go. I could start a fire. I could build a tent. I could do all these cool things that in real life you very rarely do. But being able to do it gave me a really big self-confidence boost that I probably needed as a young lad. But I really enjoyed it. I really, really did. And as I grew up and got out of that, obviously, and then just got on with life and all these other things, some of that resiliency was lost. That's 4. We do these really late.
I'm fine.
After the kids have gone to bed. But so the last couple of years, especially when COVID kicked off, it really kick-started that concept of resiliency and recognizing how much in life we outsource, right? I had taken up hunting a couple years before, and we had, we were eating a little bit of game meat, blah, 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 but it wasn't necessarily a staple of our diet in those early years. As we went through COVID and all the drama that was COVID, resiliency became a bigger thing. After we lived through a couple, even pre-COVID, not natural disasters, because we don't really get those up here the way other places do, but we lived through an ice storm, right? We lived through a couple-day blackout. We went through some of those things, and collectively going through all of that, it brought me back a little bit to some of those Boy Scout route. And realizing that we outsource a lot.
Yeah.
I recently got in a book by a gentleman by the name of Mike Glover talking about resiliency and being prepared.
Right.
And I've gone down that vein, not like crazy heavily, but enough. And it is something where when you start thinking about what are you outsourcing, if you really do a deep dive on your life in that,
Right.
you realize it's almost everything.
Yep.
You outsource your clothing. You outsource your security. You outsource, a lot of times, your housing. You outsource your transportation. You outsource your food, your family, the people that are teaching your family. There's a whole lot of things that you're
Yep.
outsourcing. Through COVID, we obviously, and again, depending where you were, through that, you may have recognized that less or more, again, depending on where you were. But up here, things were quite restrictive. Things were quite locked down. We weren't the worst for even Canada, but we were pretty darn close. And we were definitely the worst for North America collectively.
Yeah.
And some of the worst globally. Number one, yeah. But part of what that did is, that I'm grateful for, is we had already kind of made the decision that we were going to homeschool our kids.
Hallelujah, thank you, Jesus. Yes.
Right?
Yes.
We had already got there. We had already started to procure some of our own meat. We started a vegetable garden long before COVID.
No, we didn't. We started.
No, we started one years ago.
Oh,
it just
yeah,
failed miserably.
It failed miserably. We found success.
We found success
in our vegetable garden
Yes, through
COVID. I learned how to can
Yeah,
through COVID and make bread through COVID.
yeah,
Yeah.
And it's something where, so for
Sorry. Yeah.
dinner tonight,
Yes. Oh, yes.
we had venison that we harvested. Or killed, depending how you want to look at it. I don't care. We had fruits and
We had,
not fruits,
we had
but-
zucchini that we grew in our garden.
Yep.
And we had a salad of cucumber, tomato, and basil. And the basil's from our garden, the cucumbers from our garden. The tomato
There's-
was not.
Well, they're not ready yet.
But they're just not ready yet. But I've got a few dozen lovely green tomatoes that in 2 weeks I'm going to start prepping.
Pulling tomatoes.
Yeah, last summer I made 29 jars of tomato sauce.
We just finished them, right?
No, I have 3 left.
3 left.
Three
All right, so
left,
we made it
just
through
in
the whole one.
time. Yeah.
Right now we have a countertop full of blueberries.
Yes.
Because we just went blueberry picking at a local blueberry farm.
Yep.
And we collected a ton so that we can freeze them and have them all winter long.
Yeah, make our own jam.
All those things. And you know, you may listen to this and go, "Yep, Matt's a prepper," and you're somewhat correct, and I'm okay with that.
You may also think, well, why would we do that? Or I can't do that.
But it's something where, you know, through all of these things, and through just the understanding that we want to be a little bit more self-sufficient. We
Yeah.
want to be a little bit more invested in our own lives.
Yeah.
To where, do we have some water saved? Yes, we do.
Yes, we do.
Do we have some other stuff saved? Yes,
Yes,
we
we
do.
do.
Are we telling you where it is? No, we're
No.
not. But it comes down to, what are you outsourcing, right? There was a study done. It was done pre-COVID, and then it got popular in the middle of COVID, that the average family has enough food for like 3.5 days in their house at any given time. That's it, right? So in the event of anything, right? A tornado, a snowstorm,
Right.
it doesn't have to be
Catastrophic.
catastrophic. It can just be that, like, we had some windstorms the other day that took out power throughout the city, and a couple areas in the city lost power for like a day and a half.
Yeah.
And we have a freezer full of meat that I don't want to go bad just because we lose power for a day and a half
Yep.
in the middle of a hot summer, right? Some of these things, although they sound crazy and out there, they're really not that bad, right? So the question I just want to ask you, and kind of prompt you to think about it, because this is what happened to me and what prompted me, was the concept of, what are you outsourcing, right? There's a lot of things that are really good to outsource.
Oh, yeah.
One of my clients was a financial planner, and one of his taglines was always, anytime he was dealing with a client, trying to close the client, was outsource the stress of your investments to us.
Right.
We will manage that for you, because you may not want to manage your retirement savings all by yourself. Let us help you. Let us outsource that for you. Outsource the stress of that to us. We'll take care of it.
Yeah.
And that's great.
And you did a great job with it.
Did a fantastic job. And we still have stuff with their company.
Yeah.
Right? And that's perfectly fine. We outsource a lot of things that is great. It's a matter of recognizing.
It's hard to live this life today without outsourcing.
It's about recognizing what is being outsourced and who you're outsourcing to. Right? We, in my personal company that we have, we do a lot of technology, we do a lot of things like that, and occasionally we'll sell like an alarm system, right? We do it very rarely, but occasionally it happens. And when we do it, we always, because of who I am, I can't just sell an alarm panel to someone and say, hey, this will protect your family throughout anything, because it doesn't. It's an alarm that goes off if you leave the door open or somebody opens the door. Recognize, is that 5 or 6?
Tried to hide it, didn't work.
Recognizing that you outsource some of your security to people that are not you is fine. We do that too. But it's also knowing what the response time is in your area. And there's all these little things that you can do to increase your security in this case that still relies on outsourcing, because in our case we live in Canada. There's only so much we can internalize. But you can do simple things like just locking your doors or throwing an extra screw in your deadbolt,
Right.
so that it actually goes like into studs opposed to just the little frame on your door. Who are you outsourcing your children to? Right? Like, who are you outsourcing your transportation to? Do you have any additional fuel for your vehicle? Heck, which reminds me, we need to fill your van. But how often do you let your vehicle get down to next to empty?
Right?
Right?
What happens in the case of an emergency? Because
Like,
we've had to change our thought process on
even
that.
simple things, because again, everyone always takes this into a worst case scenario situation. But what happens if your kid, like one of ours one time, rolled out of bed and cracked his head open a little bit, split his head, needed some stitches?
Yeah.
If your vehicle has
And
no
this
fuel,
is like 2 a.m.
if your vehicle has no fuel in it, are you going to stop to get gas, or your kid is screaming their head off because they've got a little gash on their forehead? Right? Like, a lot of this is simple stuff that we outsource without really thinking about it. Right? And heck, in some cases, in some marriages, maybe you just outsource that to your spouse and you've never filled your own gas tank, which I know is not the case in our relationship, but there are some people who...
You fill it 90% of the time for me.
Yeah.
But yeah.
But there's a lot of people who don't even know how to put gas in their vehicle. Right? Because their husband always does it, or their wife always does it. I don't judge. Yes, I do. But like, what are you outsourcing with your children? Right? If you've got your kids in public, Christian, private, I don't care, in the school system, are you literally just sending them off to school to say, hey, go learn something with no involvement whatsoever? Are you going to your school board meetings? Are you having meetings with the teacher to find out what they're learning?
Are you even just communicating with your children and asking them on a regular basis, hey, what did you learn today? What was the... And being more directive, what was your favorite thing that you learned? What was something that made you uncomfortable? How did your...
What made you proud?
Yeah. And, being a little bit more
engaged
and directive with your questions to get more out of it. You know, how are your friends today? Were all your friends there? Anybody?
Who are your friends?
Oh yeah, that's a good one. I mean, and really trying to press and be more engaged in finding some of that information out. Sorry, when it comes to kids, let me tell you, I'm a little.
When I was like, the whole goal of this was to get partially to that point, just because A, it's one that is not talked about enough, and B, it makes me sound less like a prepper. But when you start talking about your children, I'm amazed at the stories that you hear about how often parents don't know who the friends are.
Yeah.
They don't know whose house they've gone to. They don't know who the parents are of the kids that they spend the most time with.
They don't know about the TV shows their kids are watching.
Yep.
They don't know about the video games or who's on the other end of those video games.
Yep. What social media apps they have.
So I'm just going to throw this out there to you, but you would be shocked, and we are very limited with what we allow our children to watch on TV, and it is always in a very, it is in an open space when they do, but you would be very shocked at some of the topics that are allowed in what are considered elementary children's programs anymore. And what's getting fed into them.
Even books.
Yes.
And again, I'm not here to debate what your kids might watch, what your kids might read, what you let them read. I don't care. That's not for me to say, because they're not my kids. But I'm continually intrigued by the number of people who don't seem to know.
Yeah, but I was going to say, there's so many people
what is
who
being done.
don't know.
Yeah.
Or they can't comprehend the fact that certain elements are being brought into a very simplistic TV show that is geared for kids ages 3 to 5. Right?
Yeah.
And I think that's where
who are you outsourcing babysitting to? Right? And it may be a babysitter. It also might be TV. Or it might be video games.
Or the computer. Or
yeah. And it's very interesting to me, right? I own a tech company. And a lot of times we deal with networks and computers for clients in their homes. And when you do that, you see things, either on purpose or not. We're never searching for this stuff, but sometimes you just can't help but be aware. When I've brought some of this information to homeowners, we'll say, the shock that the majority of them have at some of the stuff that is, we'll just say, is being visited or being viewed, being accessed, is disappointing, we'll say.
That's a good word.
Because they're completely oblivious to what's going on because they've outsourced that.
Yeah.
They're not taking an active role in that. And I think that's the crux of this conversation, is just to encourage you to take a more active role in your own life.
Yeah.
Right? And to take it a step further, I've asked who you're outsourcing your children's education to. Who are you outsourcing either your or your children's relationship with God to?
Yeah.
Are you outsourcing yours to your pastor? Or to some talk show you listen to? Or some network that you tune
Internet
into?
service?
Yeah, that you click into occasionally when you feel like it. Are you outsourcing your kids, Christian development, if you will, for lack of a better term, to the school teacher, the Sunday school teacher.
So I'm running our children's ministry right now.
Yep.
And so I have a very hands-on to it. And, we're learning a lot of great things in kids' church. But the kids that are in it, if they are only getting what is being taught, that by the time, because the kids stay in for praise and worship, so by the time they come in, they get settled, we have a little bit of snack, we do our little opening exercise. I mean, they're getting 20 minutes of Bible, right? Through, because they're in there 45 minutes an hour, but hardcore Bible. So if the parents, and I am going to pump as much Jesus into those kids as I can, and I am going to pump as much word as I can into them.
Yep.
And I want them to know who Christ is, who they are in Christ, and I am going to put as much of that in them and fill them as much as I can. But if the parents are outsourcing the kids' relationship and their Christianity to what is occurring in kids' church only,
Yeah, it's not enough.
they're not getting enough.
No.
And
Even if you're just doing that in your walk.
well, that again,
If all you're doing is...
if your walk with Jesus is
If you've
the
outsourced...
hour you're at church on a Sunday.
Yeah, if you've outsourced your path to heaven based on attending, hopefully, every Sunday,
Right.
right? That's maybe an hour.
Yep.
In a lot of churches.
Yeah.
That's an hour.
Yep.
An hour a week, that's 52 hours out of the year, right? Whose responsibility is that? Are you taking any responsibility for that aspect of your life?
Yeah.
I'd argue you're not.
That's a good question.
And it comes back to all of these things when you're looking at your life. How much are you outsourcing? How much do you have to? Because there's a lot of things that we do that we have to outsource.
Yeah, I'm still going grocery shopping every week.
Yeah.
I
Like,
mean,
that
there's
doesn't-
no getting around it.
No.
As much as we're trying to grow our own vegetables, harvest our own meat.
Yeah, it's great. But we still, there are still things. I believe
I
it
am
as-
not making my own milk.
No, that's a lot. And we don't
don't
have
have
any
a dairy
cows.
farm,
We don't have any
so-
cows. One day. But
If I could, I would.
we can't refine our own fuel,
Right.
right?
We can't create our own electricity.
Well, we could actually. Yeah, there's ways. There's ways to do that.
Yeah, okay, fine.
But, I'm not this off the grid type person,
right.
right? That's not where we're at. But what we are at is looking at what we're outsourcing, look at what we can take some initiative for, some responsibility for, to make sure that we are doing everything we can to ensure that how we want to live isn't interrupted, right? That also comes down to our family, right? And how we are raising our kids, how we are preparing them, how we're walking out our relationship with God, how they're walking out theirs. We can take a lot of responsibility for that.
We also are trying to teach our kids that they are not outsourcing their relationship with Jesus through us.
Yeah.
And that it becomes their own relationship with Jesus. I mean, and our kids are 8, almost 7, and almost 4. And we've been instilling that
From an early age.
I mean, even Noah, there are some times where I make him, at 3 years old, he has to, I can't just pray for him,
Yeah.
but I
Has to pray
will
with
have
you.
him, I will, even if there's a confession that he needs to do, I will make him repeat it after me,
Yeah.
right? Or there are times where I make him call on Jesus.
Well, even when we do, our bedtime routine with them, right? You or I or both of us pray every night. The kids pray almost every night as well. Because, and from the day, even before they could actually talk,
Yeah.
right? Because we're trying to instill in them this concept of some personal responsibility, right? And it goes through all aspects of your life.
Yep.
And I think that's something that gets conflated a lot.
I'm just going to say this one thing. And don't say, well, that must be easy for them.
What is easy
us.
for us?
Because we made the decision. No, but that's the thing. We made the decision. So I don't want, again, I don't want somebody to say, well, that must be easy for them. You know, your dad's the pastor and, you know, I work at the church and whatever. But it's not easy for us. It takes a lot of work. But we've decided.
It's a lot of work and a lot of time.
It's a lot of work. It's a lot of time. Man, and a lot of heartache. Mm-hmm. Like, there are times I feel totally just deflated, but I'm not going to give up and I'm not going to stop. In fact, it's a lot of work, but it is worth every ounce of it to fight for it. No, but I'm being serious.
I know you are.
I'm being serious. So I don't ever want anybody to say, well, it's easy for them. It's not easy for us. These are decisions that we've made, and they've been decisions, and it gets easier.
It does.
As we, like, live out life.
Yeah. It is one of those things where, and I was listening to another show, and they were talking about a power outage that happened in, I want to say, like, North Carolina area, South Carolina area. Probably last summer. And, you know, same thing, right? It must be easy for them. He owns his own business. He can, you know, do what he wants, right? I was listening to this and they were going through, and they interviewed a couple of different people in this company.
Right.
Right? One of them lived out in the country, had a generator, had a big property, had all this stuff. One of them just moved into the city, hadn't even unpacked, was living in an apartment. Another one was living in a townhouse.
Right.
With 3 kids by herself. She's a single mom now. Another one was just in a, like, high-rise downtown. And they all went through all the different steps and all the different things that they've done in their lives to, again, just take some responsibility for some stuff. And did it differ in approach? Yeah,
Yes.
100%. But was it them all working separately, of course, but all working at some level to take some additional responsibility for themselves, be a little bit more reliant upon themselves,
And do what they
be a
were
little
able
bit
to
more
do and capable of
resilient
doing. Yeah.
in life? And, you know, that was one of those things that was when I'd listened to that episode, because for me it had always been that whole, you know, well, when we get a big place and we out in the country and we have this and we have this and we have this, then we can start.
Right.
Right? And obviously, you know, we're talking about a bunch of different veins here. But for a lot of that, I hadn't thought about the fact that we could do it while we were here, living in the house we're living in. And it was like, well, shoot, if we just start,
Yeah, you got to start somewhere.
then we can do a little bit.
You start somewhere with everything. You just start somewhere.
And it's one of those things where, you know, working with our oldest the other day when we went camping, right? I was starting to teach him a couple different things, right? Teach him how to make a fire, teach him how to do this, teach him how to chop wood, because he's never done that,
Yeah.
right? Because as much as I don't think we're city folk, we're quasi, like, we live in a city,
Yeah.
right? He had never done any of that.
Yeah.
And it wasn't the, hey, we're going to take you into the backwoods with only the clothes on your back and a knife, and you're going to survive for 4 days.
Right.
Right? It was, we're going to camp out of the car, and we're going to have a huge tent
We have
with
2
an air mattress and
coolers.
coolers and all these things and heaters and blankets, but we're also going to learn how to make a fire.
Yeah.
And do we have a stove? Yes, we do. Are we going to try and cook a little bit over the fire so you can
Yes, we
experience that?
Yes, we
Yes,
are.
we are. Why? Because that little bit teaches them a little bit of what they can do. And the look on his face when he figured out how to chop wood.
Oh my gosh.
was amazing.
Priceless.
Right? When he learned how to make a fire and build the little log cabin by
Yes.
himself, right? Or with a little bit of help from Dad. But, and then, watch how, when you light it like this, poof, everything starts going. It's amazing to watch that. Right? And I think it's something where you can learn to be more resilient. You can learn how to limit what you outsource.
Right.
You can learn to be a little bit more responsible yourself.
Self-reliant.
For yourself, right? In all these areas.
Yeah.
And, to bring it back to your walk a little bit, it is, and again, we've been hitting on this for like 4 or 5 episodes now, right? It's really easy to call up Pastor and be like, Pastor, will you pray for me? I'm not feeling well. It's another thing to have some scriptures in your Bible that you can flip open to and be like, I've bookmarked all of these.
Yep.
And I'm going to pray all of these. I'm going to meditate on
Know
all
where
of
to go
these.
and know how to attack it.
Right? To start feeling better. Because you could take some responsibility. You don't have to call your pastor, call your youth leader, call your children's church worker every time your kid is under the weather, or you're under the weather, or you need a breakthrough, or you're depressed. Right? You can take some personal responsibility to pull yourself up out of that, grab your Bible, and build yourself out of that. Right? But it takes resiliency. It takes some personal responsibility to do that.
Yes.
And I just want to encourage you to do it.
That was encouraging, right?
I think it was.
It was encouraging.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Totally.
You can do it.
Be all you can
You
be.
got this.
Ooh, look at that. Let's go. So again,
Level
I
up.
just wanted to...
Sorry, I had to throw that last one there.
Thank you.
Go.
I just wanted to encourage you to look at your life, look at what you're doing day to day, look at how much you're outsourcing, and see where you can at least provide yourself a little bit of a backup. Because it's great. Like, it feels so good every time we have a power outage here. And the simple things like, I know where the lanterns are. I know where the batteries for them are. It doesn't, I don't get concerned when the lights flicker.
Right.
Because I know that we've got some stuff prepared
Yep.
for that.
Yeah.
It's great.
Oh,
It
absolutely.
doesn't bother me at all.
Absolutely.
And I know there's a lot of people who have that would cause a lot of concern. So go figure out some responsibility for yourself. You can do it. That's all I got.
I think
No
that's
less
good.
word? All right, we are going to wrap it there. If you'd like to connect with us, you can find us on most of the socials or where you're watching this show. At the Matt and Fiona Show or Matt and Fiona Show. We'd love to hear from you. We are currently debating a AMA or a Taking Questions show at some point. So if you have questions or you want something or if you have something you'd like us to cover, shoot
Let
us
us
something,
know.
connect with
Yeah.
us, and we will happily disregard any of the dumb ones and only go with the good ones. But tell me I'm wrong. Yeah. Otherwise, we will see you next week for another great episode. We look forward to it. So, see you next week.
We'll see you there. All right, bye now.